James Baldwin was an American novelist, playwright, essayist, poet, and activist. He was born on the 2nd of August 1924 in Harlem, in America. And many of you might know him from some of his most famous works, such as Giovanni's Room, Go Tell It on the Mountain, and If Beale Street Could Talk, which was adapted for film in 2018. Baldwin was shaped by life in Harlem and the conditions of black life in particular, and black suffering. And this caused him to ask deep questions about the role that white people played in the oppression of black people, not just in the United States, but also around the world. Baldwin was heavily impacted too by his experience of the black church in his youth. He grew up to preach at the age of just 14 years old, and he recalls in later life how this impacted both his intellectual formation, but also his political outlook and his spiritual understanding of the world and his place in it. He would recall in later years what it was like to experience the euphoria of charismatic worship in the church, where people were speaking in tongues and rolling around on the floor, slain in the spirit. I think it caused him to question the role of the church in the black struggle for equality, but also in his own life as someone who was black and gay. I think he could see the church's complicity in his own suffering and the things that he had to endure. By his adulthood, I think his place in the world made him distant from the church as an organised form of Christianity. He had a rare clarity with which he could see the hypocrisy of the Christian church as it failed to stand alongside black people in their struggle for racial equality. In 1968, he was called upon to address the World Council of Churches, and he gave a very powerful and prophetic speech on white racism and the Christian community. He left America for quite some time and went to live in France, first in Paris, where he experienced something of the French prison system, and then eventually in another part of France. He struggled, I think, with witnessing the civil rights struggle from the safety of France, and eventually went back to America for a short while, where he worked alongside Martin Luther King, Nina Simone, Maya Angelou, Toni Morrison, Lorraine Hansberry, Langston Hughes, and Marlon Brando. He eventually came back to France, where he died from cancer on the 1st of December 1987. I think his contribution to us as Christian people is in his wrestling with his faith and his identity. I think he allows us to reflect quite deeply on the place and role which God has to play in our lives and experiences as individuals. That questioning and critical honesty that Baldwin displays is something I think I value particularly, and which we could all learn from in this time, and particularly in Black History Month.